Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MSP. This is a US election special where I'm just going to talk about one very small area of well, in this case, the Trump campaign, and something that I think is deeply, deeply disturbing. If you are someone who's watching this who is a fan of Donald Trump, I'd be interested to see what your answer is to this. I'm quite surprised if you still are a massive fan of Trump and putting yourself through the torture of listening to me have a go at Donald Trump. But I just think it's deeply worrying from a kind of a moral and political and moral point of view. I find this really deeply divisive and problematic and dangerous, actually quite dangerous, the level of rhetoric. We're going to start with Benny Johnson, who is a guy who's already in trouble with Russian disinformation. So Tenet Media, that company that was set up by Lauren Chen, the Canadian right winger who was being paid 10 million. She got paid 10 million. Her and her husband, I think, $10 million by the Russians to then disseminate Russian disinformation out through sort of YouTube channels and whatnot. And Benny Johnson was one of the recipients of that money, wittingly or unwittingly, we're unsure. So take what he says, obviously, with a huge pinch of salt anyway. He's a compromised human being. But here, regurgitating Trump's truth post here by saying what Donald Trump says, and this is Benny Johnson claiming that Trump is torching Kamala this morning. So this is how Trump tortures Kamala by saying, to all rapists, drug dealers, human traffickers and murderers, welcome to America. It's important that you send a thank you note to Lion Kamala Harris, because without her, you would not be here. We don't want you, and we're going to get you out. Sorry. We don't want you, and we're going to get you out. So this is the whole idea that the US is full of illegal immigrants, and they're all rapists, drug dealers, human traffickers, and murderers. They're all terrible people, and there's an awful lot of anti-migrant sentiment going on. But this has gone to a really disturbing level where it's almost fascistic, kind of real dehumanizing language that is, as I say, dangerous. I think we're getting to a point. I think we've been here for some time, but where the language is quite horrific that's going on, and we get to this in a second. Some of the claims about these people we've already heard about: eating pets, eating cats and dogs, and you've got geese and all sorts of stuff involved, and it's getting even worse and worse. And bomb threats have resulted, and children have had their schools closed because of the damage that kind of rhetoric has done. But also, that rhetoric has been proven to be false. Okay, so the original people who put out some of those I don't know what you call them. I guess initially stories or theories that they had a missing. So what was it, Mrs. Sassy or whatever, the cat that was missing, and a neighbor claimed it was Haitian migrants who had taken a cat and eaten it, and then eventually she found it in a cellar and it was like in a basement. It's like, okay, so sorry about that, but that had done the damage, and there were the two such stories that got out, and then there's a picture of a guy walking with a Canada Goose in his hands, and actually it's roadkill, and he's a black guy, but he wasn't Haitian, nothing to do with Springfield, Ohio, it's totally somewhere else. And all of this has seen, well, the rhetoric has whipped up this anti-migrant sentiment that I think is really unhelpful. It's not at all healthy for any country, and I think it's, as I say, downright dangerous. The idea is this. I was going to show this to you last, but actually, if we preface what I'm going to say or what I'm going to show you with this, and this is coming from retired General James Mattis, okay, someone you wouldn't have once sort of imagined would be so critical of a Republican nominee. He says, Donald Trump is the first president in my lifetime who does not try to unite the American people, does not even pretend to try. Instead, he tries to divide us. So what you're going to see is some rhetoric that is incredibly divisive. And I've talked to you so often about, can you reach across the aisle to steal some of the electorate from the other party? Can you reach those independents? Can you reach those undecideds? what is the best kind of rhetoric that does that? Now, there is some interesting thinking to be done around whether fear sells more than joy. And I was listening to analysis recently, and you can base this on, as I said before, on evolutionary psychology, that actually fear is more powerful in the human psyche. It drives us more immediately because it actually triggers physiological reactions that is probably more evocative than joy in terms of getting us to do things, right? So although joy is obviously more enjoyable, literally, and it is more positive, as far as rallying the electorate to your cause, you could argue is not as effective as fear. And so, what the Republicans are going to be trying to do is ensure that fear sells more than joy, or fear has more effect on the electorate than joy. And one of the ways they do this is with migration, is otherizing certain people and blaming everything on them in this sort of way. And Godwin's law and all this, don't want to kind of bring Hitler into the discussion so early on, etc., etc. But this is kind of reflective of rhetoric that was around in Germany in the late 1930s. This is a case of blaming crime, of blaming economic woes. So they are coming to steal your jobs. We've had Trump say 107% of the jobs have been taken by illegal immigrants, which A, doesn't even make mathematical sense, and B, is empirically entirely wrong. And then he's talking recently, he keeps mentioning at rallies that they're coming to take black jobs. These black people are coming to take black jobs. You're like, really? What's going on there? Anyway, this is a case of they are criminals and they're taking your jobs, etc., etc. So there is that division and that fear mongering. Okay, well, is this the case? Is this actually what's happening? Well, let's listen to the words. And by the way, as Mike Rothschild here says, this is the worst I've ever seen him. Irrationally angry, incoherent, unable to stand up straight, out of breath, spinning out stories of things that never happened, mentally shattered, physically unwell, absolutely detached from reality. There are some people actually saying that his speeches at the moment are really off the charts in all of those ways that we just heard. So bear that in mind as well when we listen to what he says.
Disgusting illegal alien who was led into the United States by Kamala and her lax law. Every one of my killer. We had the great. He would have never been able to get in.
Just what's going on there with the syntax again? I keep talking about this making sense. He's just not making sense.
Every one of my killer. We had the great. He would have never been able to get in.
Let's do that again.
Lax law. Every one of my killer. We had the great. He would have never been able to get in. She stopped every single one of them. She was the border czar. Now she doesn't admit that. Whether you call her a czar or not, she was no czar because she really wasn't a czar. She didn't give disgusting illegal alien.
So this is about disgusting illegal aliens. Now, he might pick anecdotes that may have some basis in reality, but if you're blowing that up and generalizing that across all migrants, then actually we've got a problem here. So, I could give an example of American that, or a Polish person, a Pole, or a Frenchman, or a British person, and say, oh, this person did something disgusting, and that might be a true story, and then say, so therefore, and it's a hasty generalization in technical terms, but I'd say therefore all British people, or all Polish people, or all Americans are terrible, because look at this instance. So we need to be aware of that if you're highlighting mere anecdotes and saying that is a generalization, then we've got problems. Anyway, as Thomas Tyner says, I'm always amazed that millions of Americans are, well, yeah, you can see what he says there, who believe this a Nazi SH1T.
Sir, they don't commit crimes like us. No. They make our criminals look like babies.
Who are they? So they are migrants in general here.
Sir, they don't commit crimes like us. No, no. They make our criminals look like babies. These are stone cold killers. They'll walk into your kitchen, they'll cut your throat. Sir, they don't.
They'll walk into your kitchen and they'll cut your throat. This is absolutely disgusting. And I've already shown you the statistics. I had them lined up again, but I closed it. But I've shown you the statistics that not only are first generation migrants less likely to cause crime, commit crime, and be incarcerated for crime than indigenous Americans, but also illegal immigrants are as well, illegal aliens. So to do this kind of generalization is statistically absolutely incorrect. And then to talk about them in this kind of way, like they'll come into your kitchen and cut your throat, is absolutely horrific. This kind of rhetoric is absolutely uncalled for, and yet he gets away with doing this. I find it absolutely disgusting. And he's talked about this before in very similar ways about how horrific they are, and they'll do this to you, and they'll climb in through your windows. Is another one we've heard, and you're like, what are you doing with these claims? And then we hear this. I mean, there are lots of problems with what he says here. I will stop it at a couple of points.
How does it? You're talking about areas of the Midwest where they're becoming famous because they're being occupied. And this is hundreds of little cities and little towns.
So the question is, whatever he's going to say here, we're talking about hundreds of cities and hundreds of towns. This is an awful lot of places, an awful lot of people, an awful lot of police forces in these areas. The question is this just an outright lie? And if it is, how irresponsible is it that he is exaggerating in this kind of way?
This is hundreds of little cities and little towns. They're petrified. And their law enforcement is petrified. You have a sheriff and a deputy, or you have a small group, and you'll have a group of Venezuelan killers, street gangs.
So we're talking about the Midwest here. Talking about the Midwest in the US, and interesting why he'd choose that area. And he's talked on another video that I was going to show you. He goes on about Pennsylvania. Why are you choosing Pennsylvania? That's interesting. Oh, it's because it's the most important battleground state. That's why he's choosing Pennsylvania, to scare you about. And he's talking in Pennsylvania, talking to them about all these migrants coming up and et cetera, et cetera. And here he's talking about Venezuelan gangs. Now, there's this one kind of debunked myth about a Venezuelan gang with AK-47s taking control of a building. And he's blown this up into being now literally, this is now hundreds of towns and hundreds of cities. I mean, I'll find it for you. So Venezuelan AK-47s gang, right? Just put that into Google or whatever. Inside, what do we have? Trump. Yeah, this is the one. So Trump repeats debunked Venezuelan gang conspiracy. They had AK-47s, the ultimate guns, he said. This is before he'd said this. This is going back to September the 5th. So he's been going on about this for a long time, but it's debunked, right? This didn't happen. This is the whole Aurora. So we have Springfield eating chickens and, eating dogs and cats. And then we had Aurora, Venezuelan people taking over. He said, you saw in Colorado this week, a group of from Venezuela, rough ones, they took over large sections of a town, large sections of an area of Colorado. Aurora, has anyone been there? I think you better stay away for a while. And this just wasn't true. The sheriff didn't want to touch him. Nobody wants to touch him. The sheriff, there's 18 Venezuelans attacking my building. Would you please come over and straighten out the situation? You know what they say? Well, no thanks. Let's call in the military. They're taking over. This just simply didn't happen. Yet now he's expanded that to 100 towns and 100 cities. It's just deeply, deeply irresponsible. Anyway, I won't interrupt it this time.
You're talking about areas of the Midwest where they're becoming famous because they're being occupied. And this is hundreds of little cities and little towns, they're petrified. And their law enforcement is petrified. You have a sheriff and a deputy, or you have a small group, and you'll have a group of Venezuelan killers, street gangs, occupying the town with MK-47s. I know that gun very well. I got to know it very well. I've become an expert on guns quickly.
So there's a real problem here because he's talking about how amazing he is and how clever he is, the best in the world. Oh my God, no one knows these things better than me. Says, I'm an expert on guns. I've had to learn a lot about guns. These Venezuelans with MK-47s. And of course, MK-47 isn't a gun. Well, you can Google and find a version, but like he's talking about AK-47s and then trying to show that he's really clever because he knows about AK-47s, which is the most famous gun in the world. But he gets that wrong because the story is about Venezuelans with AK-47s.
And you'll have a group of Venezuelan killers, street gangs, occupying the town with MK-47s. I know that gun very well. I got to know it very well. I've become an expert on guns quickly. My sons know guns. They couldn't believe what the story they heard, the two stories they heard, actually. But I don't.
Two stories. I thought you said there were hundreds. So now I've heard this of my sons. Two stories. I guess you could have a story about hundreds of cities and hundreds of villages. Hundreds of towns, sorry.
Care because we're doing it for you. We're going to make our I don't care. I just say we got to do it.
And there was an analysis I saw recently where basically, as long as he ends up every kind of anecdote or every speech with "Make America Great Again," and everyone forgets all the nonsense that he's just heard. They've just heard because make America great again, and it just does a lot of heavy lifting.
I don't care. I just say we got to do it. How does this...
just really deeply disturbing? As Steve Martin here says, this man is the nominee of the GOP. And by the way, that is Steve Martin. That is Steve Martin, the comedian and actor. This man is the nominee of the GOP for president of the US, and millions of people love him. America has a problem. First step is to admit the problem. Second step is to overwhelmingly defeat the insane person so thoroughly that he leaves us and takes his hats and shoes and watches and crypto and Bibles with him. Then, as a nation, we have to reach into whatever illness allows this kind to thrive and cure that disease. So he's quite strong on that. Now, what he's talking about is another, but just truly bizarre part of the speech.
Remember, there's a hat that's made that sells like crazy. Oh, there's a fly. Oh, I wonder where the fly came from. See, 2 years ago, I wouldn't have had a fly up here. You're changing rapidly, but we can't take it any longer. We can't take it any longer. Remember, there's a...
What are you talking about? Can't take what any longer? Flies. Wouldn't have happened 2 years ago. We didn't have flies 2 years ago. But now, look how you've changed. Just bonkers. The man is just bonkers. And then here, but anyway, that wasn't to do really with the subject matter at hand. I won't read actually, Donald Trump, the deranged racist, says this person, while making the false claims, wants you to know that this group of imaginary migrants is really, really, really black. This is a false claim. So listen to it. It's a very short clip here.
Last week, a lot of people came in from the Congo, a big prison in the Congo in Africa.
So that is cut short, that clip. But basically, this is seen in PolitiFact, where, you've got, I think this is a JD, let's go back to the beginning. No evidence for Donald Trump's claim that Congo is releasing people from jail into the US. So a persistent theme of former President Donald Trump's false immigration rhetoric is that immigrants are pouring across the border after leaving mental institutions, jails, or prison. He's made the claims broadly about immigrants and specifically about people from Venezuela and the Democratic Republic of Congo. The Congo has just released a lot of people from jail. Congo, Africa just released a lot of people from their prisons and jails. and brought them into the United States of America. We found no evidence that Congo's government releases prisoners and sends them to the US. We previously also could not corroborate the claim about masses of Venezuelan prisoners coming to the US. Here we'll focus on this claim from Congo, and then they basically go through the claim and say it's rated as pants on fire. Trump said Congo, Africa, has just released a lot of people from the prisons and jails and brought them to the United States of America. Trump's comments leave the impression that some official entity of Congo is releasing prisoners and bringing them to the US. We found no evidence to back that up. The Trump campaign pointed to overall data on illegal immigration during Biden's administration, and one news article that said human traffickers brought people from multiple countries, including Congo. There are some immigrants from the Democratic Republic of Congo in the US, of course, as there are probably immigrants from every single country on earth in the US. But that doesn't mean that they were part of a government-run effort to send criminals to the US. We rate this statement as pants on fire. So that's PolitiFact's worst rating of is essentially a big lie. And then we get this about such criminals.
What the hell is going on? See, we have to let the police do their job. And if they have to be extraordinarily rough.
So, and just to let you know, he is advocating police being extraordinarily rough. Like, basically, they can be as violent as you can imagine. I don't know whether extraordinarily rough includes killing people, but he's certainly saying they should be able to be extraordinarily rough.
And you know, the funny thing with all of that stuff, look at the department stores, same thing. They walk into you see these guys walking out with air conditioners, with refrigerators on their back.
Who is walking out department stores with refrigerators on their backs? I mean, again, like, what is the evidence of this? We've seen that in Ukraine when the Russian invaders have stolen refrigerators and put them on the back of their trucks and what have you. But I mean, I've not heard of this in the US, and if there is an instance of someone walking out of a shop with a refrigerator on their back, again, anecdote to generalization is a problem.
The craziest thing, and the police aren't allowed to do their job. They're told if you do anything, you're going to lose your pension, you're going to lose your family, your house, your car.
What is he talking about? Like, where is the evidence that the police are not allowed to arrest people for stealing air conditioners and refrigerators because they'll lose their pension if they arrest them? So this is a really problematic period of time where someone is able to stand up on stage and talk to audiences of, in this case, thousands, but on TV, millions, right? And communicate to them outright lies. Just tell them outright lies and not be held accountable for them. Police aren't allowed to arrest people for committing crimes or stealing this because otherwise they'll lose their pensions, and immigrants are coming and they'll, break into your house, come into your kitchen and slit your throat. Like, and all of it is just outright lies or gross and irresponsible hyperbole. As you then on the back of this, you get massive scaremongering from Elon Musk that, as Mehdi Hassan says, none of this is true and even makes sense. I'm not sure why anyone would drive a car made by someone this dumb. Elon Musk says very few Americans realize that if Trump is not elected, this will be the last election. Far from being a threat to democracy, he is the only way to save it. Let me explain. If even 1 in 20 illegals become citizens per year, something that, and this is a great replacement theory, something that the Democrats are expediting as fast as humanly possible, that would be about 2 million new legal voters in 4 years. The voting margin in the swing states is often less than 20,000 votes. That means if the Democratic Party succeeds, there will be no more swing states. Moreover, the Biden-Harris administration has been flying asylum seekers who are fast-tracked to citizenship directly into swing states like Pennsylvania, Ohio, Wisconsin, and Arizona. It is a surefire way to win every election. America then becomes a one-party state and democracy is over. The only elections will be the Democratic Party primaries. This already happened in California many years ago, following the 1986 amnesty. The only thing holding California back from extreme socialism and suffocating government policies is that people can leave California and still remain in America. Once a whole country is controlled by one party, there will be no escape. Everywhere in America will be like a nightmare that is downtown San Francisco. It's just painting a picture of this dystopian country that is absolutely terrible. It's horrific, and of course he's partly saying that about California because California has taken a stance against Elon Musk, and Gavin Newsom has taken a stance against deepfakes and disinformation that has been spread by Elon Musk himself. So Elon Musk is saying this with an agenda in mind, but it is incredibly divisive. This is really problematic, and Mehdi Hassan is absolutely right to say that that none of this is true and or even make sense. And then we start hearing this is just sort of breaking over this weekend that all the immigration data that Elon Musk and MAGA people have been posting over the weekend were a lie, and they knew it. Hundreds of millions of Twitter users saw data about decades of US immigration and were told it was from the Biden years. And this is what Elon Musk has been has been amplifying as well. So it's feeding into this narrative of demonizing migrants. And this is not to say there isn't a genuine immigrant or migration issue in in the US. Like, I'm not doing that. What I'm saying is that this rhetoric is deeply incorrect, deeply problematic, and wholly, I think, morally reprehensible, actually. Um, because it is lying to the people of America, to the electorate, about the true scale of whatever problem there may or may not be. So here we have CNN doing a fact check to attack Harris, and Trump falsely describes new stats on immigrants and homicide. So what's happened is that Trump has falsely claimed on Friday and Saturday that statistics are specifically about criminal offenders who entered the US during the Biden-Harris administration. In reality, the figures are about offenders who entered the US over multiple decades. In other words, it's like saying, look at this, we've got stats here, like 500,000 people have entered and they've done this and done that, and Biden, blah, 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 blah. But actually, that number refers to like 20 years rather than 4 years. In reality, the figures are about offenders who entered the US over multiple decades, including during the Trump administration, and Trump falsely claimed that statistics are specifically about people who are now living freely in the US. The figures actually include people who are currently in jails and prisons serving criminal sentences. Quote, Kamala should immediately cancel her news conference because it was just revealed that 13,000 convicted murderers entered our country during her 3.5 year period as border czar. Trump wrote, so he's very explicit about this in one post on Friday, the day Harris visited the southern border in Arizona. Harris, quote, allowed almost 14,000 murderers to freely and openly roam our country. Trump wrote in another post on Friday. They, quote, roam free to kill again, he wrote, escalating his rhetoric on Saturday. Facts first. So the CNN says Trump's claims are false in two big ways. First, the statistics he was referring to are not specifically about the people who entered the country during the Biden-Harris administration. Rather, those statistics are about non-citizens who entered the country under any administration, including Trump's, were convicted of a crime at some point, usually in the US, after their arrival, and are now living in the US while being listed on Immigration and Customs Enforcement's non-detained docket, where some have been listed for years, including while Trump was president, because their country of citizenship won't let the US deport them back there. Second, that ICE non-detained list includes people who are still serving jail and prison sentences for their crimes. They are on the list because they are not being held in immigration detention in particular. So the new statistics released by ICE in a letter to the Republican congressman this week said there were 425,431 total convicted criminals on the non-detained docket as of July 21st, 2024, including 13,099 people with homicide convictions. The statistics have been deployed by Trump and various Republican lawmakers and right-wing commentators as alarming evidence of Harris's supposed mismanagement of immigration policy. But in addition to exaggerating her role on the file, she was never actually a border czar. Much of the chatter has inaccurately described what these statistics show. Her job was to go to other countries and talk about the reasons why people are coming to the US and try and sort of solve these in a largely more diplomatic way at source, rather than being a border czar, which was kind of rather incorrectly ascribed to her. Anyway, a spokesperson for the Department of Homeland Security, which oversees ICE, said in a Saturday email, quote, the data in the letter is being misrepresented. So this is actually, from the Department of Homeland Security. The data goes back decades. It includes individuals who entered the country over the past 40 years or more. the vast majority of whose custody determination was made long before this administration. It includes many who are under the jurisdiction or currently incarcerated by federal, state, or law enforcement partners. Probably also includes a bunch of people who are dead, I would imagine. But anyway, 40 years or more of stats being rammed into the last 4 years by Trump. It's not clear how many of the 13,099 people with homicide convictions on ICE's non-detained docket as of July the 21st are currently incarcerated in jails and prisons. Regardless, John Sandberg, an attorney who served as acting director of ICE during the Obama administration, said in a Saturday interview that it's 100% false to say that all the homicide offenders on a non-detained docket entered the US during Harris's vice presidency. Sandberg added, these are individuals who undoubtedly entered the US over a long period of time. A lot of them have probably been on a list for 20 years, where the US has been unable to deport. CNN could not immediately find public statistics on how many people with criminal convictions were on the non-detained docket during Trump's presidency, but there are public statistics from just before and just after his presidency, and those statistics, which we'll discuss later in the article, make clear that Trump too presided over a non-detained docket that included hundreds of thousands of people with criminal convictions. In other words, like, Trump is at best being hypocritical, at worst just being an absolute is it lying? It is lying to say, actually. He explicitly said it, didn't he? In the Biden-Harris administration. So it's a massive long article. This CNN one, well, fairly long, and it has a lot more detail in it. You can go and check that online. Now, Seth Abramson says, the right time to call what Elon Musk is doing on Twitter election interference is now. So, in other words, that Elon Musk is amplifying these false claims is deeply problematic. He's posting data he knows is false and is seen by hundreds of millions, and then ensuring it receives no community note. So there's this inability to call that out as false information, because the claim is that he's not allowing community notes on those, or they're getting deleted by the followers, etc., etc. In a healthy democracy, what he's doing would at least be a civil offence. P.S. This is a man who brought Twitter under the claim that its prior owners were too political. It appears, and by the way, it is insane. Like, go and read. What is it? Must be 90% of Elon Musk's, and that is me speculating, but 90% of his tweets appear to be overtly Republican propaganda. Like, he is insanely political. It appears that what he meant was too powerful. America could not be allowed to have politically diverse platform as influential as Twitter was, so he turned it into a far right weapon. So there you go. And then we have here from Joyce Elaine, Trump's claim that illegal aliens are voting and poised to steal the election from him is a lie. Non-citizens can't just walk across the border and register to vote. It's a federal crime for non-citizens to vote in a presidential election. That doesn't stop him, though. Despite the lack of evidence, the non-citizen voting is a problem. Last January, Trump began ginning up concern that it is. How bad has it gotten? The Brennan Center studied 42 jurisdictions after the 2016 election and found only about 30 cases of potential non-citizen voting out of 23.5 million votes cast. And how does Trump explain immigrants being responsible for his loss when GOP senators and Congress people won? So simplify it out. We'll make sure that you guys understand. So he's saying that this is a big problem, non-citizens voting, but actually it's a tiny problem. It's a statistically insignificant problem by a huge margin. So only 30 cases were found in 42 jurisdictions out of 23.5 million votes. So there is that. But also, if it was a problem, then that problem also elected a shed load of Republican senators and Republican Congress people, representatives. So that it doesn't really work anyway. Existing methods, this is the whole problem about the vote being cheating, right, as a result of cheating, or the results being a result of cheating, because though he didn't get voted in, an awful lot of Republican senators and representatives did get voted in. In fact, the House has been under the control of the Republicans. And so, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Anyway, existing methods ensure only citizens registered to vote. Voters must certify they are citizens. In 2022, Georgia's SOS audited voter rolls to Secretary of State to find non-citizens. He found 1,634 attempts to register over a 25-year period. and election officials caught them all. So, in other words, yeah, when there is a problem, it is sorted out. Common sense tells us why this isn't a problem. Someone who's made the dangerous journey here wouldn't risk prison and deportation just to cast a vote that wouldn't impact on the outcome of the election. As soon as you take a minute to think about it, Trump's lie doesn't hold water. This is really, really important. Yeah, and it just gets back to this idea that Trump, or it's not ideas, it's a clear fact. Donald Trump is the first president in my lifetime who does not try to unite the American people, does not even pretend to try. Instead, he tries to divide us. So there's only one ticket that's, I think, unifying, and there's another ticket that is deeply, deeply divisive, and is using dangerous rhetoric that is not only an outright lie, but is actually fairly dehumanizing. And yeah, just when you have to lie, overtly lie, to try and win something, anything, then you are the cheat. You are the cheat. I just find this pretty abhorrent, and I just wonder what in a cold light of day, what people, you might still like Donald Trump for X, Y, and Z, but like, how do you square that circle with the idea that he's a good person, or I don't know, how do you deal with these kind of lies and this kind of rhetoric? Yeah, it's one thing to say that immigration is a problem, and that's a valid discussion, and we can have that discussion, but it gets completely obliterated as a bona fide debate to have when you're just presenting the arguments as these overt lies and really, I think, dangerous narratives. Yeah. Anyway, let me know what you think. Am I being fair to Trump? Am I overdoing my criticisms here? I don't think I am, because I think his words clearly speak for themselves. I mean, they clearly do. You just have to listen to him and go, well, yeah, you're lying. You don't know what you're talking about. And I'm not having this whole, oh, he's exaggerating, oh, he's being bombastic. Yeah, when you're exaggerating about things such that schools get closed down because there are bomb threats, then you are triggering bomb threats. That's not just, oh, it's just exaggerating. That's not good enough. That's freaking irresponsible. No, and if you're running for president and you're freaking irresponsible, then I don't think you should be running for president. Just my tuppence there. Anyway, there you go. Time for bed.